what has brought them here. So I want to thank everybody for responding to the invitation for this meeting, and also take this opportunity to open this meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay,
the highlights of the study findings, but most importantly, to sensitize the community on safe practices of how best we should use medicinal plants to make them more viable to the patients that we treat, but also to conserve what we call sustainable utilization. Because from the field, we have seen that our plants are really deteriorating. Most of them are getting extinct. So it is important that the users of these herbal medicines, the custodians of the herbal medicines, and the indigenous knowledge be sensitized so that they know how best to use the plants, but also for continuous utilization, and also for transfer of knowledge and documentation as well. So this study was conducted in this district of Pade in 4 different sub-counties. The sub-counties were Pade, not Pade, Anagora, Ogom, Pajule, and Lapul, sub-counties. And that was the study. It was by activity and toxicity of selected medicinal plants that people use for treating candidiasis. So what is the background? What drove me to carry out this particular study? At higher level, what we call the graduate level, specifically mine was a PhD level, I was motivated by the prevalence of this disease. It's one of the neglected diseases, but it's real and it's really killing people. You can see from that statistics, globally, on a yearly basis, about 1 billion people get infected with candidiasis, out of which we lose 1.5 million of them on a yearly basis. So that's not a small number. In Africa, there is no documented statistics. But what is written out there is that many people also die of this disease. Most times this disease is associated with HIV. And it's one of the predisposing factors and one of the leading causes of people living with HIV. When it comes to Ugandan context, you find that on a yearly basis, about 2.5 million get candidiasis, and mainly oropharyngeal candidiasis and vulvovaginal candidiasis. Oropharyngeal is the one that affects the mouth up to the anal area. And then vulvovaginal candidiasis is mostly common in women, affects the reproductive parts of the women. So in northern Uganda, where Pade district formed, the oropharyngeal candidiasis affects about 45,000 people, and that is mostly related to those with HIV. And for the case of pregnant women, you know, pregnancy comes with a lot of changes in the body physiology. And as a result, many women experience candidiasis, especially vulvovaginal candidiasis, about 6,000, and out of which half of them get recurrent episodes, meaning they keep coming. You treat it, they come back again and again. And of course, when you're not healthy, it means that your normal functioning is as well affected. You don't go doing your normal routines. And also many families have got affected with that. Of course, when a woman has candidiasis, because it affects the reproductive organs, you find that certain marital obligations may not be fulfilled. So we find that these cases are really common. Why are they common? Because we know that Candida species, like any other disease, like malaria and others, we have the conventional drugs. The modern drugs in the market, they are available, but most of these drugs have been resisted by the pathogens. Pathogens are things that cause these infections. They have resisted them, they have become resistant. So you treat, but the disease cannot die completely. They keep coming back again and again and again. So that's a very big challenge. And because of that, you find you're treating the disease, but it keeps on coming back. People opt for alternative medication. And one of the biggest sources of alternative medication is use of herbal medicine. That's why we cannot do away with herbal medicine. Many people have failed to use conventional drugs, or they have tried, but the drugs have failed to work. But when they go for herbal medicine, the drug works. So that is one of the reasons why we need to explore herbal medicine or traditional medication, and how best should they be used, how should we preserve them, the knowledge, because there's a lot of knowledge decay. The modern generation don't want to associate themselves with the traditional medication. So when the elderly persons, when that time comes and they go, what will happen? Doesn't mean the knowledge will also go, and yet we still need this traditional knowledge. People will continue to use them again and again. So there's a very big problem of disappearing knowledge. The plants that we heavily depend on are also disappearing. They are disappearing. For sure, I was in a field. It was so painful that sometimes you get plants which are so rare. But because we need to take them to the lab, we just go and harvest them painfully. The people walk long distances to look for these plants. And you may find a few of them, but still, when you harvest them, you're sure that next time you come back, it will be a hassle to look for them. That's why me and any other stakeholder out there, we need to put concerted effort to ensure that our medicinal plants are preserved. On a field observation note, I also come from a home background. All of us come from home background. I'm sure in one way or the other, we have all used medicinal plants in one way or the other, either directly or indirectly to treat someone. So let's see how to support this cause to ensure that our medicinal plants do not get extinct. One of the ways is to encourage people to study, to document these plants. Once they're documented, once they're on record, then we have a reference point. Let's encourage many students to partake this study, like the DHO on that docket in their training of the health officials. There's always a department called pharmacology department. They deal directly with indigenous knowledge, including medicinal plants. This should be encouraged so that our plants can be documented. But there is rich with knowledge of medicinal plants. But there is rich with indigenous plants. But documentation is almost at zero level. What I can testify is that not more than five studies have documented the plants that we have. And yet many of the plants people tell you, we had this, but they are nowhere to be seen. So let's make concerted effort. So that is the main problem, disappearing knowledge.
Malu pergi jauh memang berkawan ni. Berkatian ni, dah mati gitu, kandidasis, dah mati baik dah mati gitu, dah liu, mungkin Rio kali ni nanti, dah mati dia dah, nanti biar ada dia bawa mati gitu. Jadi kamu berapa ni? Kita orang ni biar tuan lagi kita boleh tiada, di jumkai madong lo ya curi. Berapa kita orang ni biar pada, ya pada, kalau distrik mana ada biar ngam, ini punya ni je. Waktu mana biar dia muka ni, ya ni, cakap ni ruang, cakap orang nombor payah. Yang kai cui, yang kai orang nombor payah. Chỉ biết là phụ nữ đang ở trong cái đang của bệnh kinh nghiệm nhiều trong cái về các biệt là về đang có biệt là về biết nó mai ngó của con đang là gì biệt tôi cũng cái này quang rong tìm một Diri malami o ya nim no pere no do ne ka pa wa mai we ngo ta on e biri fun down we ngo na ko be ki ge no kimi tikere kimi gwa o be diri malango ko ko ndare ni pian ti ko ni chao ka ne chera ya ma dire ki be mi ni ya mo nyu kir ba ba che la no pe ngo pe bu kira la kana ya la jure pa ke kwinya ni ngo imo ki mi ri wa kana to no ma la.
Which are the plants that people use in Kadeh district for treating candidiasis? And from that study, I found out that there are 32 plant species. From the 4 sub-counties I went to, 32 different plant species that people do use for treating candidiasis. And then from those, of course, in the scientific research, even if people tell you we use these plants, you need to verify those plants in the lab, whether they work or they do not work. And I think I gave the detailed scientific procedures of what I did in the lab. And I found out that some plants do work, what we call the efficacy study. So that was done, and we found 3 different plant species that work. And so that was one of the objectives, to find out which of these plant species, especially the ones that people use most. So there were 5 plants that people mentioned, a lot of them. There was a lot of frequency of mention of in the usage of those plants in treating candidiasis. Out of that, I tested them and found 3 of them were very effective. Then out of the 3, I needed to find out these plants that are commonly used, are they really safe? Because every drug can be safe and can be toxic as well. That's why there's always a prescription. When you go to the hospital, they don't always prescribe for you 2 times 1 for this number of days. If you take more than that, you get toxicated. So I also went to the lab. This herbal medicine, people take the whole jug. Is it really safe as people proclaim? So it was important to also find out. And I went to the lab and I verified the safety level. How much should someone take to remain at a safe level? So those were the objectives that guided this particular study. Now, so those were some of you, I think you can identify yourselves on those photos. So that shows that the study was surely done among the stakeholders. Those are the plants that I was talking about, the plants that are highly mentioned, those that people really use in treating candidiasis. We have the first one being pomo. Almost everybody mentioned pomo. The next one was tido. Tido was highly mentioned. Ochulu was highly mentioned. And agava. Those were the 5 plants that people really mentioned. Last time I remember I explained to you the details how we are really screened them. But from the screening, I found that the ones that were very, very active were tido and ochulu in single when used in isolation. But of course I told you that for me my method I used was a bit different from your method. So you may, if yours work, please continue using it because one research. So that is the team that I worked with in Makerere University lab. Just next to me on my left, the one putting on the blue lab coat is my second supervisor. Of course I have 3 supervisors, and that is the one that was present at that time. And then those were the teams in the lab that I worked with. You go to the next. So for today, I've come to give you the key findings. So number 1, as a recap, number 1, I found out that there were 2 main plants that were very, very effective. That was Kaya anthotheca, locally known as tido, and then Nuclear latifolia, known as chulup in the local language here. But for tido, what I use methanol as the extract, and then for chulup, I use cold water. And the best way of preparing plants, some people boil, some people put in cold water, some people put like tea. But from the study, I found out that the best method is maturation. Maturation is where you pound the a plant, you put in cold water, but the water should be boiled and cooled, and you leave it not less than 3 hours. Then you give the patient to drink. So that is one of the most effective way in which you can always use your plant. So those were already, I'm just giving a recap, but it's what I explained into detail last time. So let this be translated and then I bring in the new knowledge. So I went back into the lab to test those 2 particular plants, Ochulu and Tido. So what if I use various doses? Of course, I use standardized methods as prescribed by various scholars. So when I use those methods, I found out that for both plants, the safest dose that caused no toxicity to any of the body organs were 125 milligram per kilogram of body weight. You know, in hospitals they give medicine according to your weight. That's why the doctor will tell you, first stand on the weighing scale, and then they do some calculation. So ati miara wachini la niosha unu penya ni ya piano ya rajuli ni bere toxic is what piano beke no piano ke ma ma duo twa piano wa ni ma jega chiel ma jega kana chiel right never done. Yes. So after I said love, I know you may remark matitiri, Keoki measure the kilo, Katie kila chill, Chiki milligram, Matingo, 125. Pinya according to kilogram, but maybe Kai you in the standard way, Kata you book it. So me no pay you for Jeratin, no imat Marwate, Madonna. So Jomado at team will study that I used laboratory rats at you, Mati you, Tiwa Yao, you one nail, effect name, one meal doses no part. Mugan one meal dose, but who are that? I don't take a chill. Tiwa nail, effect no better than me. Mugan one meal, tell the go but chill. Mugan one meal, tell Marana.
You know, answer those one. Get a boy, you don't know well you tell them. Me a man, chilling, get a boy, chilling, and like more you are among Madwo, and no pound and get pound and a ton of work.
I follow. So yet any kawatika munyo we are not cutting matane, we are not taking man or room to file it. We are taking man room to another calling the tool. Now we get to Mukene. Who got your man to candidates still who look with a made there, Markachana. So we are looking more related. Now procedures are Abia to la Nero Chani, Kimatil, don't find a kilo procedures, PM teach any, don't take online. Tear down way now, we do way now, Tima, Anati, but they can't call. So teaching it published. Journal of the tropical medicine and health. When you think all the way down Nero, Tierra Quanu, Tierra now, they're going to do it, Mamma Chani. It's just a carry, and no teacher, okay, looking at it, and when we publish it, teaching online command.